what to you makes an incredible documentary?
At the core of every film is desire. You have to be able to identify what does your film desire, and more importantly, what does your main character desire. If Chris is eating his breakfast and he's just saying like, yeah, I'm not sure how I'm gonna lose this next 20 pounds. And then he goes to the scale and then he stands on the scale and he looks at camera and he's like, yeah, I'm 20 pounds over right now and we're 12 weeks out. It's like, now we care. We call it capturing footage. It's like you're capturing someone's life. The lens is always taking, it's rarely giving until it's on screen. So you always have to think too, what am I giving? No documentary ever got worse by being shorter. Often you gotta just really think, is this absolutely imperative to the desire of the character?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 133 of the 505 podcast. Today, we got a very special guest. We got Mark Bone all the way from Canada. Now, he just finished wrapping up filming and directing CBUM's documentary, which I can't wait to see.
Me either, because I feel like I relate to CBUM.
Oh, yeah.
You know, super well with the whole like super into fitness thing. So just hearing the behind the scenes of how the documentary was made was super awesome. He goes into such depth of what it takes to create from start to finish a documentary film.
And make the best films, not only just go out there and make something. I mean, he's diving into the lighting techniques that he uses, the camera techniques, how to make a cinematic image, what he's looking for in these spaces, how to build rapport with the subjects that you're filming. He doesn't leave anything behind the curtain.
He also goes into depth on what makes a great story. I feel like that is one of the main things that beginner filmmakers, specifically for documentaries, struggle with. That's what he's told us. So just hearing his process of like how to conduct a great interview, lighting, cinematography, the whole thing. It was an incredible episode.
He's a gold nugget of value.
I mean, we've learned so much from his YouTube channel alone.
Yeah, from lighting techniques to cinematic camera techniques, Mark really covers everything. I don't want to hold you any longer. Let's get into it. All right, Mark, give me the one-handed crack. Let's see what you got. High hopes.
We're starting off with it.
Oh, Mark,
gosh,
stop. Oh, God, Mark. Holy shit. You did it and you started
you said, give me it.
You started on the table.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, I did.
It's okay.
All right, well, other than starting it on the table, let's see how he finishes.
We're going to get it. No, we're not going to get it.
It's okay. Okay, Kostas will join you with a score. There it is. It's not about how you start. It's about how you finish. I'm going to show you how to do it right there.
Big splash. All right, here we go.
Dang.
Kostas going to try. The skinny cans are way easier,
that's
though.
Flawless.
Skinny cans are way easier.
That was
Did you guys bartend ever?
Cheers from across the pond.
Like, I have no skill.
The most I ever worked in like a restaurant was I just hosted. I was a host at a restaurant in Venice for a year and a half.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I was in the dish pit in an Irish pub.
Oh, wow.
You were in it.
I cut my teeth in the restaurant.
You were in it.
I was in it. I smelt like the dishes at the end. Like hot water mixed in with like wing sauce and a little bit of Guinness. At the end of the day, you never get that out of that clothing. That clothing was done.
It builds character. Builds character.
It smells like failed Irish dreams.
So, Mark, tell me, you just finished filming a doc with CBUM. I know you had an awesome team around you. I've actually been DMing with Calvin these last few weeks.
Nice.
I want to know, how did the project come to life? What was it like to go out and film this six-time Mr. Olympia, Chris Bumstead?
Well, when we started, he was only the 5-time Mr. Olympia. And that's kind of the key for a film is you want your character who you're going to be potentially filming to actually have a goal. And so, we have Art of Documentary. One of our students, Calvin, who you just mentioned, he had been working with Chris and done all his YouTube channels, filmed like 450 videos with Chris for over like 6 years. They approached us and were like, hey, Chris is retired. We either want to film a doc about the past 5 years up to this point. And they're like, but there is like Calvin at the beginning was like, there's maybe a chance Chris goes for it again, but we don't know. But the fact that I had this treasure trove of archival footage that Calvin had shot, and I looked at the YouTube and I'm like, yeah, it's pretty engaging. It's authentic. I was like, yeah, let's, let me pitch you an idea. Here's what I would bring to the table. Here's what I would add to it. And Chris was stoked about what we had showed him. And at that time, I was telling Chris, I'm like, yeah, this should take like 12 to 15 days of production because like, you're not competing again. We're just going to do some interviews and maybe shoot a couple of cinematic like workouts. And then partway through production, Chris, like early days, Chris was like, I'm going to go for it again. I was like, okay, this is a totally different film. But I was very excited, and I was kind of hoping in the back of my mind that he always would go for another title defense, because then you're shooting an adventure. Then it's game on. Then you're planning out how can we be as most present, least intrusive, but getting the most intimate footage possible. And so that's how it turned out. And yeah, you couldn't ask for anything better. And it's not a spoiler. He won his 6th consecutive title. So it was a fairy tale ending that way. But yeah, it was great. We got to film all the other top athletes in the division. So it's going to be a pretty big story, and we're hoping that it's the next Pumping Iron, if you remember that film that Arnold was part of back in the 70s.
Oh, I loved it.
One of my favorite parts, I believe it's in Pumping Iron. It might just be in another doc about Arnold, but he's like, you got to shock the muscle. And he's like, you think I'm going to start with incline bench, but no, I'm going to start with some bicep curls. You got to shock the muscle. I just always remember that. It's awesome. You mentioned that you want your character to have a goal when it comes to documentary filmmaking. What to you makes an incredible documentary?
Well, it's just that.
Okay.
I try to simplify things, and it's what I teach in Art of Documentary. And it's at the core of every film is desire. You have to be able to identify what does your film desire, and more importantly, what does your main character desire? And can you show them trying to accomplish that desire? And what's great is desires can be physical and what I say metaphysical. You should always be looking at those two journeys of every film and every person. And so the physical desire of Chris is to win his 6th title. That's really simple. But that film, if you just focus on the physical journey of your character, you'll only ever reach the built-in niche audience, because bodybuilding fans are going to be like, yeah, I want to watch Chris go for his 6th defense. But for people who are unfamiliar with the genre that you're exploring, you have to go into the unseen, the emotional journey. And so then I wanted to explore with Chris up front. And this is where kind of the reason why I took on the project also is started finding out Chris has been doing a lot of therapy, and that he went through a lot of mental health struggles, and the kind of the weight of an entire industry on his shoulders. He's considered this generation's Arnold Schwarzenegger. So there was a lot that he was going through, and I don't want to give away too much in the film, but I kind of asked Chris boldly at the beginning and just said, like, could we use your therapy Zoom calls, like those therapy sessions, and could I be part of a therapy session, just me, you, and your therapist? And he agreed to this. And so you have this masculine figure and this sensitive, intimate therapy session, and you have this guy going to be showing that he has the best body in the world, but at the same time, he's trying to make sure he can be the best father, husband, and wrestle through all these other things that you'll find out in the film. And so those two dichotomies, to me, make an interesting film. So yeah, to back up and just say, you have to have desire, but you have to explore the physical journey of your character, but also the emotional, metaphysical journey. And Chris was willing to explore those with us, which was really exciting and makes for an engaging film.
I can't wait to see it. I'm super excited to see that come to life. Now, when you think about, Mark, like all of this footage, you got 7+ years of like archive to go through. And then you obviously have this big event, this peak Olympia event. How do you go about like constructing what the bones of this documentary is going to be? Are you a whiteboard guy? Do you and your team sit down and you're like, okay, let's go through all these little moments? Is it a conversation with Chris? Are you talking with Calvin? Like, kind of paint us the picture for how do you take 7 years of this content and collapse it into, an hour and a half or 3 episodes or whatever it's going to look like?
It's a continual process, and you kind of named a lot of the things that we're doing. A great deal of it comes from conversation, but also a great deal from it just starts with starting. And so in that room behind me, I have a cork board with a bunch of like flashcards or whatever you call those, and different colors. And just like when I first started the film, just started writing down scenes. Just was like, what would I want to see in a film? Because I don't know the story yet. I need to actually just think about like what would be badass. And I'm writing stuff down like, oh, he works out with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that that hasn't happened yet, but we hope so. But it's like all these cool moments that you think could be part of the film. Chris does his title defense. Chris talks to his therapist. This happens. There's an injury. So you start writing these down. You put them on a board, and then you start arranging them in terms of what I do is in terms of both sequential of like when those would happen, But then also in terms of the intensity, I start numbering things saying this is like a 5 of intensity. And I write down, is this emotional or is this physical? As in, is this part of the journey towards the Olympia? And is this part of the emotional journey he's on? Because you need those two going hand in hand. Because if it's just the physical journey, it just becomes a 2-dimensional film. So there's a lot of that. To me, I just like to always do this, and always teaching in an A.O.D. just about simplifying complex problems. So yeah, it's just a lot of writing down the scenes and identifying what those are, and then coming back to that. And I've already done this. I wrote out my first episode outline, which had, I call them acts, but they should maybe be called scenes or movements of the film. And I had like 18, and I showed it to my producer, who's a writer, and they were just like, no, we got to really cut this down. So suddenly all the stuff that you shot, you're already, before you get to the edit, you're like, yeah, we can't do that. We can't do that. Because what someone recently told me, he's a producer, has worked on 30 different documentaries. He goes, no documentary ever got worse by being shorter. And so often you got to just really think, like, is this absolutely imperative to the desire of the character? And if it isn't, it has to be a really funny or interesting scene that just provides levity to the film. Otherwise, if it doesn't relate back to your character's goals, it needs to get out of there. You can do some education, like I think there's going to be scenes that I want this film to relate back to historic masculine context and muscles. Like, you think of Michelangelo's David, or I was just in Germany for filming one of the characters, and there's these 300-year-old statues in Berlin, and these guys look like they could compete in Olympia. And I'm looking at them and I'm start filming them because I'm like, this has to be part of the film. Like, men over millennia, or just the human narrative, we've obsessed over muscle, and it means something more than just you're strong. And what does that mean? And why is there an Olympia competition? So this is where I'm trying to find layers, and then you begin shaping that. And you'll never nail the story the first time out. My first script that I wrote when I pitched it to Chris is completely different than when we are now. And the script I've written now that we've shot it is going to be completely different than what we deliver in the end once we get into the footage. And what I always say is the footage will talk to you. You just need to listen. Like, you're going to be like, that scene that I thought was cool, it doesn't work. So if you're not a good listener, you're going to be making a film based on an idea that you thought was cool. But you actually, what's fun with documentary is you have an idea at the beginning, but then the footage takes you down to the real idea of what you shot. So it's a process. It's like, if I tried to sum it up, I could talk all day about this. I always like to simplify it, but what I love is then it gets more complex. But the simple thing is, have I identified my character's desires, what they want? Have I shown the obstacles along the way? And then have I celebrated them achieving that, or exploring their failure? And both of those are really interesting endings.
Absolutely. Mark, let me ask you this. How familiar were you with the bodybuilding community before stepping into making this documentary?
I hate to admit this publicly, but I didn't even know who Chris was a year ago. That's how unfamiliar my algorithm was with bodybuilding. I kind of knew who he was because Calvin's one of our students, and he would post these films about CBUM. I just knew, I was like, oh yeah, I think that's a strong Canadian guy who's getting a hair transplant. But then I didn't know much else. But that's where I'm never intimidated by that, because I then spend a little time researching. Like, I made a feature film about autism recently, a couple years ago, and it'll be on PBS this next year. And I didn't really have much context of that besides having some extended family who perhaps are on the spectrum. And so I use that as, can I explore this world, and what can I find out? And do I have empathy and interest in this area? And is there enough people who I can speak to about it to educate myself? So yeah, all that to say, like, I'm a runner by trait. I'm definitely been getting a bit more into the lifting because it's been inspiring seeing what Chris does. And just in hearing all the stats that you lose 1% of your muscle every year, I'm like, I'm very far behind. Running sheds as much muscle as possible. So I was all that to say, I was really, really unfamiliar, but that never intimidates me. It kind of excites me, because then as a director, I get to go into a world that's unfamiliar with me, find out what I find interesting, and just trust that a broader audience who doesn't understand that world will also find that interesting. And then if I explore, like I said, the physical journey of my character, I know the fans will appreciate that. And so you have these two audiences. One that the fans, they're always going to love it. But then I'm always like, how do I reach this other group of people that don't know this genre, don't know this world? And so what did I find interesting, and will they find that interesting? And I don't know, if they don't find what I find interesting, it's okay. That's kind of art. It's your taste, it's your perspective, and you have to trust it.
Flag on the play.
What's going on?
Important announcement, okay? The creator economy is going to be at 480 billion by 2027.
You say 480 million?
Billion with a B. Okay, now this is from the Artlist Trends Report 2025. It's the first link down in the description. You guys got to go check it out because there's some very interesting stuff in there for creators and brands alike. And I think there's crazy information that you guys are going to want to hear.
Not only that, but we actually did a full podcast talking about the Trends Report that's over on Artlist's channel, which is going to be out very soon. So definitely stay on the lookout for that.
One of the interesting things from the report was talking about trends and how creators and brands alike, I mean, we really think that trends should be maybe 10% of your core strategy.
I mean, don't get me wrong, we've all made trends before, but having it be your main strategy is not a good strategy when creating content.
And I mean, I just don't think there's that substance to latch onto. They don't know anything what you stand for. They don't know your values. So when you're thinking about content, you want to lead with authenticity. I think that's the number one most important thing, whether you're a brand or creative going into 2025.
Another interesting thing they talk about in the report is the use of AI. We all use AI, but I think what's important to remember is to not let AI do everything for you. Have it be like your co-pilot. Nothing can beat the human touch. And when it comes to creating authentic content, you don't want to lean on AI too much.
I totally agree. And I think it's important to understand the different tools that are available to you.
Yeah.
But you want to make sure you're using trusted platforms. And you also want to remember that at the end of the day, you writing a video and maybe getting a little bit of help, it's not going to beat you just going out and making your favorite piece of content. Like, it's just not going to do that. And at the end of the day, the human touch is always going to win, and I stand by that. Yes, it might make our processes faster, but when you're creating something creative, lean on that brain power and go out there and make something fun. Let's keep going with this episode. Check out the full report down below.
You bring up that you were able to sit in on one of Chris's therapy sessions. That's a pretty intimate thing to be a part of. What tips do you have for building rapport with the characters that you are filming to be able to allow them to be as vulnerable as possible?
You know, one thing I learned signing contracts a couple years ago, the lawyer I was working with, the advice he gave me and the person it was a business deal. He said, I need you two to pretend right now that you hate each other, that like something has gone wrong. One of you has really wronged each other. He's like, how would you want to go about this and what has happened? And it was weird to role play that way, but it was able that we then created a contract around the worst case scenario. And then we were actually able to talk through what that problem could have been. You know, if one of us isn't working on the project enough and the other person feels like they're doing all these sort of things. So, you know, partway through this, I kept thinking, I tried to like put myself in Chris's shoes and was like, I have a goal right now. I want as much access to Chris as possible. But what would that feel like from his perspective? Well, he's trying to win the 6th Olympia. He's trying to solidify his legacy. And he has this skinny white director from Canada popping into his house being like, I need you to do this. Like, let me, you know, and like putting a camera in his face. So I just sat down with him the one day and just said like, paint me failure right now. Like, what is pissing you off? But more importantly, down the line in this film, what would really bother you? Like, let's role play. Let's pretend like this is going wrong. Like, I need to know. And we were actually able to have like a really great conversation. And I think that was kind of, for me, I felt it was a turning point in the filming. And just, you know, it was me not constantly, but just calling Chris, checking in with him and saying like, how is this process going for you? What would you like to see done differently? But giving him the opportunity, not just saying like, are you enjoying this? It's like people want to say what they think you want to hear, but being specific, I'm like, I asked him, I go, is there any way that like we can change the approach of this? And he just said like, I would just love for you to show up when you come to my house, like don't bring the camera in first. And it's like, you know, they have a new baby, there's all this stuff. And it was a simple request. And I've always preached it in A.O.D, but the pressure I was putting on myself as a filmmaker that I'm like, I need to get in here and film. It was just this thing. It was like, yeah, leave the camera in the car or leave it outside the house, come in, chat for a bit, and then talk about what we wanted to film. Where there's this pressure sometimes as a filmmaker, you're like, everything needs to be now and authentic. And I made that mistake early on. The one day I heard through a business partner, Chris was having a stressful day, and I kind of bum rushed him when he got to the office and had the camera in his face, and he was just like, it wasn't the right move. It was insensitive on my part, and it was putting too much pressure early on in the project and not trusting that, you know, we would get the intimacy that we needed. I didn't need to force it.
It's so interesting to just hear, you know, about your process and working with someone of that caliber. Like I've worked with a lot of athletes, and I understand the, this battle of like trying to get the shot, and what it is that you need to get in your head as a filmmaker, but then also balancing like this personal relationship that you have with them. And it's such a delicate dance to kind of go around and try to maneuver and be like, on the other hand, you're like, the fans or the people that this is going to be very interesting for the documentary. And then the other side of it is this like amazing human being and trying to respect the day that they're having and what they're going through. Could you tell us a little bit about, for someone who might be getting into documentary filmmaking, how do they kind of bridge this gap with the people that they're filming? Like, from a rapport standpoint, I know you kind of touched on it there, but
I think it's two things is be genuinely interested in their life. You don't have to be interested in the same things as them, but find something that you find interesting about them and show genuine interest. But then also too, like I was saying, when you talk to them about the process or requests they have, follow through with what they want, because that builds trust. That's the best way to build trust with someone, is to be a person of your word. So even just showing when you say, hey, we'll come by at 9, or hey, I'll call you before we arrive, or in the case Chris, it was like, hey, okay, I won't show up with the camera. I'll go about that process. That builds trust. You're earning your reputation with them. And so I think it's also, and just be down to earth. Like, I'm here making a film with Chris, expecting him to tell me all the crazy stuff that's going on in his life. I began opening up to Chris myself, telling him stuff that I've experienced the last few years, things that I felt we could relate on in terms of dynamics in our lives with other relationships. And I think just being human that way, and that's just how you build a relationship. It can't just be one way, just one way vulnerability, because then that's like a therapy session. And I don't need to be Chris's therapist. He already has one of those. What I learned on this film is like, I want to be Chris's friend, because that'll come through on the camera. But I don't want to force that also. Like, Chris, 26 million Instagram followers. He has enough people trying to get his attention. And so I didn't want to be another person from that. And so, yeah, it was a learned dynamic. And I hate talking about Chris like he's some sort of test subject, this person in this world but it was just really coming down. I was like, this is a guy who has desires, who's a dad, who's a husband, who has genuine needs in his life, and I want to make sure I'm supporting those. And in turn, by building that trust, the film will get done, and there will be more trust down the line. So just trying to earn that in a genuine way, because someone like Chris has enough social acumen that he can tell when you're just trying to get something from him. So, and I never wanted him to feel that way, because film's taking. The second you hit record, we call it capturing footage. It's like you're capturing someone's life. The lens is always taking. It's rarely giving until it's on screen. So you always have to think too, what am I giving? Am I giving this person stability? Am I giving them space to feel? And so I think one way I give back to my characters too is I bring them often into what I'm thinking. I'm going, hey, we're at this stage. This next scene, I would imagine this would be in the film. Like, what are you feeling about this scene? What's going through your head? Trying to bring them into the creative process so that they don't feel that they're just always being stared into, but that they're actually looking at the vision with you, kind of bringing them alongside you. We talk about this in A.O.D, that you want to make your characters in your films feel like they're the co-director. You don't have to give them that title, but the idea is that they get to have insights into how their story is being told, and not necessarily in the edit, but in what's actually unfolding and what matters to them.
In a perfect world, what's the crew look like? If money aside, doesn't matter, like if it was your way, what does the crew look like for filming a documentary? Like, we got a sound person, we got you as a director. What's that look like?
Great question, because it changed for me on this project. I was putting pressure on myself early on. I'm like, this is CBUM, this is Chris Bumstead. This is a huge opportunity. You need to do this the right way. And you're bringing in sound people and PAs, and you have multiple camera people. But it quickly became apparent, and Chris vocalized this, that he just didn't like it. Like, it just made his life feel like a film set. Ideally, I would always have a sound person, but honestly, by the end of this, I had to do the sound myself. We had 55 shoot days, and I probably did the sound myself for 50 of them. And so just learning how to get better sound, actually taking, it's not a promotion of the course, but we literally have this hour-long section about how to mic people properly, and I didn't teach it because I was terrible at it. We brought in a pro sound guy. I literally am going through my own course, being like, oh yeah, this is how, because I had to do it every day. So in the end, I think what you want is you want authenticity. So to say that there's one size fits all for your crew is I think dangerous because you means you're not listening to who your character is. Some people don't care that there's a film crew in their house. They might like the attention. They might like feeling like they might perform better if they feel like that. But I think most people would like to forget that there's a camera floating around. So the best scenes we had was 1 to 2 of us. It was me and usually our producer Tad, who would be the other camera operator. And I would have the mic, or we would do it to Tad's camera, and he would just roll the entire time. So we didn't even need a sound pack. But we used I don't need to get into the technical stuff, but we'd have like a double mic receiver, and we'd have that on the different characters. And so, yeah, I mean, ideally, I want the best, most raw film. And I find, I hope this doesn't come across arrogant, but often just myself is kind of the ideal crew. It's like there's no external voices. My character just feels like it's me and them. And I really do want my films to feel like you're a friend, like you're one of the person's inner circle at the end of the day. And I think that comes through with some of the films I've made, whether it be Rescate or Battleground, where you feel like you're right in there with the characters and what they're going through. So yeah, it's a tough question. You know, on commercial days, I want like 10 people there. I want 3 and 3 gaffers, 3 grips, my DP, a DIT, a sound person. But then for most like true doc days, it's like, yeah, let's keep this crew tight.
Okay, if you like to keep it tight, if you're directing and filming at the same time, does that raise any challenges? You're obviously trying to get the shot, but maybe you're also trying to direct them or get certain things out of them. What challenges may arise from directing and shooting? You
have a divided brain, and you have to commit to that one of them is going to be suffering at all times over the other. So if you're because you're both a DP and a director, and I think trying to be both those at the same time is something you can do well, but I never know if you can do perfect. I think the most ideal situation was on my film A.O.D band film, which was about a group of autistic musicians, where it was a sound person, my DP, and me, and I just was right behind my DP with a director's monitor. And I'm really particular about my cinematography, so I often find myself picking up the camera. It's how I started filmmaking, was holding a camera, and I'm still just very picky in terms of composition and camera movement and how you approach that. So I'm also really picky with the DPs I work with. But there's a few in particular I love, and on that film, it was a guy named Chris Bumstead, and he's just incredible at building scenes, just even by himself, just as a lone camera. He just edits in camera. It's incredible. And so in that way, I felt his skill set really, he's great at people and reading people, and he's soft-spoken. And so you're in these families' homes, asking them really tough questions about, you know, raising their child and what it was like for them. And so that to me was a perfect thing. And honestly, when it comes down to your crew, it's like, are they easy to be around with, and do they not take up space? I mean, like emotionally, like it doesn't matter physically, but there's some people who just have a presence on set where if they have an ego, they're demanding that they're validated, and that's just the worst thing to have on set. They're interrupting people. They're trying to make it and be known that they're creative. I like to work with soft-spoken people, and if they aren't, I keep them off set and keep them with Comtex, you know, get them out of the room. But I do agree that it's tough. So in some cases, though, you just lean in as a DP. You're like, I'm not directing this. I'm just going to look for the best shot. But that's why I've actually really loved the gear that I've been using, a camera sack, and I put my camera on that because I can actually take my hands off of it. So the camera just kind of rests in front of me, and it leaves like the organic handheld feel, but it's also high enough that it feels eye level with my characters. But that, to me, I wish I'd shot the whole film like that, because I could just keep the camera there and it would still keep a shot, but I could talk to my character then as a director. So I'm still filming, and then I'll go back to actually pulling focus and moving around or making it the most cinematic. But I could take breaks in between where I could ask them questions and prompt things and make it feel more cinematic and more filmic. But I think one gift I've had coming from like wedding videography, then to shooting independent docs, I've often had to shoot my own projects. So that idea of directing and DPing is something I'm comfortable with, but I don't want to be saying that it's like, you know, I do both perfect, because it's never the case. Like I think having a singular role sometimes can be quite powerful, but you know, filmmaking, you're a filmmaker, shooting the whole thing yourself, there's amazing films like that. And one of my favorite is Overnighters, and Jesse Moss shot and directed that whole thing himself.
The SAC kind of feels like autopilot in the Tesla.
Yeah. Similar vibe.
I'm gonna take my hands off for a sec, but like, you know,
We're gonna
have to put them on.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's
Every
funny.
once in a while, a user agreement will come up saying you're screwing up. So
When you walk into these different people's homes, I know you've done so many different documentaries over the years. Does it change your approach with like lighting in these specific homes? Do you bring like a little handheld light, or if you're just walking in to strictly document, not do an interview, like a full sit down interview, is it just raw, whatever we see is what we get? Or are you going in and saying, okay, we have a window here, maybe we sit them on the couch over here? What's that kind of look like for you?
it's case by case. I've been learning. I just recorded a YouTube video, and just my notes on it was perfect is not perfect. I find in documentary, trying to make all of the lighting perfect can diminish a level of authenticity. But yeah, when I'm coming into a space, I'm looking, where's just the natural lighting falling, and how can I make it complementary? And so sometimes it's not changing an entire room. It's just sitting someone on a couch and literally going, hey, I'm going to sit, even though it may not feel immediately natural, but I'll have them like look over the back of the couch, because if they do that, then they're going to be catching the natural light coming in through the window. So I rarely shoot scenes in people's homes with lights, because it's two things. One, it makes it feel like a film set, so people begin performing rather than living. And then the second thing is, when you do that, you are also just introducing a piece of equipment into the room that you have to dance around now. So I love doing interviews with just no lights. Like I just love the challenge of shooting with window lighting. And I think if you do it in the middle of the day when the light's not waning, if it's like, you know, usually what's great about the middle of the day is depending where you are in the world, the light is above you. So you're getting ambient light in and it's not changing, or the color temperature's not changing. But like, we shot a whole interview. That was one of the best looking interviews we did in the film with Jesse James West, that kind of like YouTuber athlete guy. He's really nice dude. And we just did it in a hotel room with available lighting, and, you know, that worked great. And I had interviews with Courtney King, Chris's wife, like, you know, just using available lighting. And to me, I kind of like using available lighting, especially near a window. If you can find a window where the sun isn't directly coming in, you get that soft ambient light. And then you're able to like just make it feel like, the less it feels like a film set, I think the more people perform well. And, you know, I always talk about this, but I remember hearing a friend of mine worked on a commercial with Wes Anderson. And he said when he was on set, Wes Anderson made sure like a quarter of a mile down the road was all the film trucks. Like everyone had to like take like these like golf carts to set. And he tried to make it feel as like a student film as possible. And like he made his DPs make sure that the whole room was lit once, and that they could move around it and shoot it however, like it was lit for the scene, and then they could get coverage. And I was like, man, here's like one of the bigger directors who can command an A-list cast of celebrities, and he's trying to make it feel as small as possible. And so I used to be not intimidated, but embarrassed by that I preferred my sets to be smaller. And I was always curious when I was getting thrown into these commercials where you have 100 crew members and $1 million of budget, and they're like, now make a documentary. And I always remember like, I never felt comfortable in those scenarios initially. And I didn't feel like I could make the best film possible. I found it just ended up being like me and the DP and then like 100 people watching. But I was like, well, that's because they want a documentary, and that's how a documentary is made. If they want a commercial, they probably, you know, there might need to be a different director. But over time, you get more comfortable with the bigger crews, but you just ultimately learn that you just have to shoot it the way that works best for you.
When did that shift come from doing commercial work and you're like, you know what, I really just enjoy the documentary side of filmmaking? And we'll get into this a little bit later on like the YouTube side of things as well as your program, but when did this shift from like more of a professional standpoint kind of happen?
It's funny, I started in documentary, then I went into commercials, and then I kind of slowly went back more into documentary. So the shift, it was in an era, like I started shooting more commercials back in 2014, 2015. That's crazy. That's like 10 years ago now. But that's when I could brand myself, and, you know, I was on a couple of directors rosters, and I was the documentary director. And that was like, whoa, you know, wow, like we can do a commercial in a documentary style. But ultimately people weren't ready for that. They still wanted a big set, and they just meant, when you said documentary, the agencies really just meant they wanted it handheld, and they kind of still demanded that you had everything shot listed down to the T. And it was really frustrating, especially in Canada, where the creative is just so timid and so safe. it was unique. And a documentary needs some exploration. You need time where you're holding the camera and getting your character comfortable. But just to walk onto set and say, this is a documentary, action, it never works out. It never feels that real. But I did that for a while, and I'm really grateful for those experiences. Got to work with brands like Nike, Under Armour, shot stuff for Mercedes-Benz. And it was unique. I had some amazing producers from like Revolver Films or Tony Peterson Film in Germany, and they all really tried to protect my vision as a director. But commercials are tough, man. You have a client, you have an agency, you have a production company, you have a DP, you have a lot of people's input on one thing, and everyone has a goal. And that, so if you don't defend your vision enough as a director, often it becomes a soup full of many, many ingredients. But it's funny, I made this one film, Beauty and the Battle, for Nikon. It was after we did 4 films for them, and I really felt like I got to show my full director skill set on that. But it was kind of after that I started my YouTube channel, and I just kind of was like, well, I can just kind of do this on my own now, and without having to have 20 levels of approval and have to fight for a director's cut. The film can be my director's cut. So yeah, I kind of slowly started making that transition once YouTube came about, and I started detaching my ego and the size of budgets I was working with from the actual work I was creating.
I know many people want to make documentaries, and I think a big thing in the back of people's mind is like how difficult it could be to get funding when they're nobody on the internet, or maybe their story isn't as impactful as Chris Bumstead and winning a 6-time Olympia, or like these Nikon films that you're speaking about. How does someone go about getting something funded? I know you talk about this in your program. I think that people would love to hear that. Just, from their beginning, starting out, maybe they have the filmmaker skills. They're a fantastic filmmaker, fantastic director, but maybe they don't have this network right at this moment. How would you recommend they go get them funded?
Yeah, I think the issue with the funding model, one of the biggest issues I've seen is people look at the outlier moments. They hear about a young guy at a film school who Sony comes in and picks up their film. You look at any discipline in life, and it takes time to earn people's trust that you should be given the opportunity. You take athletics. It's very rare, unless you are scoring 60 goals in a season, or whatever, or like, you're a basketball player averaging 50 points a game, for you to suddenly then be given a shot at like an NBA combine. And so I think a lot of filmmakers, they know they have a skill and they've been trying it out, but then they just expect someone to give them a bag for $100K to go make their film. It's like you have to earn that. You have to go up through the ranks. Even to this day, even though now like the whole traditional like intern, and then get into a union and work up, even though that model isn't the only route into the film industry anymore, you have to show people that you can create a film, that good storytelling, and that you will actually see their vision through. So I think right now, we just had this long conversation in A.O.D about that funding. It's great. We're in meetings with agents to go to Netflix, and it's all, Netflix used to produce 48 docs a year. They're down to 16 docs a year. It's like they're taking less risks. The budgets get smaller in some cases. So it's a tough time. It's also an interesting time because there's more docs being produced than ever because there's more streamers and they're all leaning into that. Although I would argue a lot of those docs are kind of like reality TV in the style that they're being made. But that's another conversation. But I think the quickest way to get funding is to always know that people, when they give money towards something, they need to have a return on investment. They need to actually see it benefit their own goals. And people who have money are usually businesses. So if you want to partner with a business, as in do a branded doc, you have to find out what that business's goals are, what they specifically need achieving, and then create auxiliary content around that is associated with the film. So what I mean is, when I worked with DJI on Trails of Dust, they didn't really give a rip about the film. They were eager about the idea of us doing 4 Instagram reels and a YouTube breakdown. So me as the filmmaker, I'm just upfront. I'm like, just told them like, yeah, I'm gonna put your budget towards making the film, but while we're making that film, I will deliver you these assets. And I'm like, and they will be specific, and you guys can get reviews and edits on those. You won't get cut on the film, but you're gonna get all of this. So I'm providing them a product that's directly talking about that. And the thing I'm also saying is, I'm gonna be able to talk about your product authentically because it's helping me achieve this. So the old model, or I think what a lot of filmmakers do, is they just so focus on the film and how it's gonna benefit them. And then they try to convince a brand, hey, make this. You guys wanna make this film because it's cool. But the brand's looking, oh, we gotta give $30,000. we have no guarantee that there's going to be an ROI. But what they do know is, if we have like these reels and these photos, we can promote our Black Friday sale. We can do this and that, or we need testimonials. So meet a brand and find out what they need. Meet an organization, find out what they're trying to achieve. Find a B Corp that has like development money that they need to be putting back into the community, and show that you can make a film for that. So I think the quickest way to funding short docs these days is honestly through the branded space. And it's become less of a stigma. Like 10 years ago, if there was a corporation or a brand behind a doc, it was like, like people were like, what are they selling? Because back then the whole doc was the product. But now with prevalence of social media, it's like the doc is less important. It's what are you creating around that? So yeah, that would be my biggest piece of that. That's the piece of advice that could work for the most people, because as I said, there's like 16 original doc series being made a year from Netflix. I can't tell your audience how to get there, because I am also trying to do that right now. But it's also like, that's very few people. And there's already a lot of people who have their foot in the door and who are gatekeeping that door as well. So for me, I'm always like, why I've really enjoyed my documentary career is I've always gone after the path of least resistance. How can I self-fund this? Or how can I get a brand onto this? Or how can I start shooting this now and bring people on later on? And I've been able to make my films like that consistently.
When you were getting into the documentary filmmaking, Mark, how were you making money? Because I know, let's say, you have this film that you're about to make, but I don't know how the payment structure works. I've never made a documentary myself. Is it that you get paid at the very end? Do you get, 50% up front, and then you're doing maybe commercials or weddings to supplement it? What does that look like?
Yeah, for me, in the early days of my documentaries, I had my commercial work. Like, I think my film Rescate, I didn't make any money off that. I did put some of the footage onto Film Supply, and then randomly, like years later, you're watching the Super Bowl and I see one of my shots and you're like, how much money did I make on that? Did they pay me properly? But it's there's different ways. You don't always see the money right away, but I think some of my favorite directors, Terrence Malick, from the people I've spoken with who know him, he's still directing commercials, like doing these big perfume ads where he makes millions, and then he puts that towards his films. So I think the idea that if you're just seeking to make a career solely based off of your doc filmmaking, just off the films you're actually making, it's tough. I talk to people who are full-time doc. I was talking to a producer this morning. She's done like a ton of ESPN 30 for 30s. It's like, it's tough out there. She's self-funding the next film in hopes that she'll get paid down the line. So I think having early in your career some second auxiliary incomes is really important. But in the case of like this CBUM film, it's like we invested the money up front to get through production. We will, the expectation is we'll take it to a streamer, take it to a platform, and then you're gonna have to retroactively build in your salary, like what you would have been making per day. So that's one way you can make your money, is that you hired yourself out to the film. There's other ways where you just go straight to TVOD, like a transactional video on demand. This is just like where you're on like Amazon Prime and you pay $5.99 to rent a film. It's like you're betting on your film. You're like, okay, we hope that we'll make money down the line. Or you bring in the brands and you carve a markup. You're like, okay, like I think of Mile by Mile, a short doc I made. Polar Pro gave a bunch of money for that, and so did Music Bed. And so it was only like, I think in the end like $20K, but I was like, I think I can make this film for $10K, so I'll take $10K home. So that's kind of like the approach that way. So you just kind of have to get crafty. I think the best thing to do is build a good business so that you can focus on the creative, because I think when you start putting commerce on top of your creative, the pressure that the thing you're making has to make money right now, I think it can kind of infiltrate a more pure creative process, call it. And that's where I see guys like Terrence Malick funding their own films, so that when they're making the film about the life of Peter and Jesus, he's not like thinking about how do I get the disciples to drink Coca-Cola at the Last Supper. He's just able to like make the film the way he needs to.
I mean, it also reminds me, just talking through this, of Danny Gewirtz. We had him on the podcast not too long ago, and a way that he was able to fund his film, even though it wasn't a documentary, is by getting his audience involved. I thought that was like a really cool way to go about it. I do want to take it back a little bit. You've brought up the word scene quite a bit when it comes to creating a documentary and how important that is. In my mind, you think of a documentary and you're just documenting, like you're kind of just filming and capturing the moment, and maybe you like it's going to come together in the edit, but like, how do you go about building out a scene? Like, are you what am I trying to say? Like, are you storyboarding it? Are you like coming in with questions? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, the real simple way, and like the truth is I'm always having to remind myself this on set, because sometimes you get distracted with the scene, like with shooting. When I say a scene is like, okay, this morning we're coming in, Chris is going to be making breakfast, and I have to think, I go, well, what's unique about this? Well, he's 12 weeks out, so the audience needs to know that. So simply though, in a scene, I'm thinking, what would be my opening shots? And the amount of times Chris laughed with me, it's like, because I never knew which scenes we'd be using, but I'm like, I'd always get a tight shot of the burner, because Chris makes all his own foods, and just the click, 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 you know, the fire. I'm like, that's a great way to just cut into a breakfast scene. And then I'm always like, why medium tight? I'm always asking myself, did I get a wide of this, show the space that my character's in? And then a medium is usually what's happening in terms of what they're saying, and then I can move in tight. But a scene for me is, I'm like, did I get an opening shot? What happened in the middle? And then did I get a closing shot? That said, I don't signify that as a scene until there's been a goal either expressed or explored. Again, you have to come back to desire, because I love breaking this stuff down. Is a desire is something that is yet to happen. You don't desire, I'm not saying like, oh, right now I desire root beer. It's like, I'm already drinking it. It's like, I'm enjoying the root beer. But maybe there was a time that I desired it, and it's like the audience is like, well, how's Mark going to get his root beer? You know, I'm like, I don't have any in the office. It's like, now we have a scene. How is he going to get it? So I think starting your scenes with a bit of that uncertainty, even if it's your character just saying like, yeah, I don't know how, you know, I'll try to ask questions. I go like, I'll even ask my characters, I go, what's uncertain right now for you? Like, what's the unknown? And then if Chris is eating his breakfast and he's just saying like, yeah, I'm not sure how I'm going to lose this next 20 pounds, you know? And then I'm thinking, okay, Chris, can we go to your scale? And then he goes to the scale, and then he stands on the scale and he looks at camera and he's like, yeah, I'm 20 pounds over right now, and we're 12 weeks out. It's like, now we care. There's a desire. We know that Chris needs to do something. He has a need, he has a want. So for me, the scene needs to be shot in a way that we can actually edit it, that we see where we are, we experience where we are, we leave where we are. But then you need to explore a desire, something else that's going on in that character's life. And that can be a little glimpse of the greater desire. It's like, even now, the desire for Chris to lose a couple pounds relates to that other desire of him to win the Olympia. So it's like getting down into these channels and knowing them, and even just having a list of things that your character wants is really important. But man, identifying your character's desires and what they want is the best way to make sure your edit is going to remain interesting, and that you'll actually have meat to work with in the edit. It's when you just focus on shooting cool that the film becomes aimless, and then you don't know why you're watching it. You're just watching cool scene after cool scene, and it's kind of like, and if you're only ever exploring the same desire, I remember a year ago watching a friend's film, and it was about an athlete, and they just kept talking about wanting to get through this one event. And it was like, after a while, I'm like, you're watching a 90-minute film and you're like, man, I don't know anything else that this person wants. Like, I'm kind of tired of hearing them talk about this one desire. It's like, you want your characters to have multi-dimensions. And it's attention though. You don't want them to seem needy, but you want to get into the exploration of what are the other things they need to achieve this bigger goal. So yeah, that's right. I just try to simplify it. There's lots of story mechanics. You can read like Save the Cat, these great books about writing. But in the midst of documentary, I don't have the luxury of thinking like, like these really auteur ideas of storytelling. I'm just like, do I know what my character wants in the scene, and have I shot it in an interesting way?
Do you guys have dailies when it comes to doc? How does your review process work with like reviewing the footage that you've already had? Are you putting the story together like as you're filming? And how often does the story often change in the edit versus what you originally thought it was going to be?
So I'm not as disciplined maybe as my business partner and co-founder of A.O.D, Michael Del Monte, is. When he did his film, His Name is Ray, which
what a name,
we just
by the
released
way.
on our A.O.D. Yeah, Michael Del Monte. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, it's
yeah.
good. I know. I need to up the game on mine. Mine just seems like I don't know. But also, Mark is the worst name to have on a film set. Like, you walk on and people are like, right, mark it, or like, can we mark that take, or like hit your mark. I'm just like, I'm there like just ready to talk to everyone, and it's just like it's the worst. So it's like, if you're gonna go into filmmaking, like, take your middle name if your name's Mark. But Michael, at the end of every day, Michael would, for His Name is Ray, he would kind of like take a day off and he would edit a rough cut of that day. And that's like super disciplined. And he just, by the end of the film, when he had this like 5-hour rough cut of his film, and then he got to choose what scenes he wanted. I more so, if I have the energy, and oftentimes on the CBUM film I didn't, we'd get home, we'd do a workout, because you're like, we got to work out. I can't look too skinny on this film. No, but it's just, you do a workout because it gives you energy. And then we go home, eat dinner, back up the footage, plan out the next day. By the time you're done, I'm backing up the footage at 10 o'clock at night. And we got to be up at 6 the next day. I'm scrubbing through the footage. I highly recommend, like, I would do enough just to know technically, am I shooting everything is my sound good? Was our exposure okay? And I'm glad I did, because there was times I caught things with certain pieces of gear that our crew would have. I'd be like, hey, your monopod's made of fiberglass. It's always vibrating. Like, we got to get rid of that. So there's like those moments that you can catch things technically. So to answer your question, for documentary, I think you should be embracing a daily process. It's good to know what you're shooting. Some filmmakers I've heard, they say they shoot it and forget it and let the editor deal with it. But I find that's problematic, and I kind of like to know what's working, and I like throwing music in a timeline and dropping some footage and kind of feeling like, am I actually shooting something I would want to watch?
On the topic of shooting, what is the go-to kit that Mark Bowen brings to the set? What's in the... I have a very selfish question after this, but tell me that first.
I was like, I sometimes have it. In the end, I thought I was going to shoot like... I was like all ready to be like, we're going to shoot on anamorphics, and it'll be an Alexa 35, all these things. And in the end of the day, I just kind of fell back into what, they say, don't go to a battle with another man's sword. It's like, I've shot a ton on Sony, and I know the FX6 really well. And just the fact that the FX6 has that quick, you can set one of your user buttons to go to 12,800 ISO, and all things considered, it's very clean. So having that capability in the built-in ND, I just think the FX6, pound for pound, or maybe ounce for ounce, is the most versatile, useful documentary camera on the market, in my opinion. And Sony's not paying me to say this. Geez, I don't even get to go to Kando. I don't get invited to any Sony stuff. I feel like I'm on some sort of blacklist. So like, you can know, like, they don't pay me to say any of this. Like, I genuinely think like some people in Sony hate me. But I love your cameras.
We were at Kando this year, and they were talking some mad shit about you. Just kidding.
What's that?
I said we went to Kando this year, and they were actually talking a lot of shit, the Sony people, about you. So.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know what you did, exactly, man. But
yeah.
We'll mend that
relationship. Some sort of curse, I touch the cameras and the cards get formatted.
So, okay, I currently have a C70. I've loved it. I've used it for many years. It's been a workhorse for me. I think I might want to flip to the dark side. Okay, if you were me in this exact moment, I feel like they're going to come out with some FX6 Mark II that I'm going to want to buy and maybe in January. Would you just chill for the time being and wait it out? Or do you think maybe we try an FX3 and get into the system? I had an FX3, got stolen. Great. It was fantastic. But now I'm maybe I don't want to give away my cards yet, but I'm maybe thinking about joining the dark side.
Yeah. I don't know, man. If you're really good, like the C70, from a lot of our students have it and they love it. And, it has the time. Is C70 full frame?
Yeah. No, Super 35. That's the problemo.
See, that's to me
kicker.
And I'll argue this. I don't get, there's this whole thing like, oh, Super 35 is fine. I'm like, no, it's not. I rather shoot full frame, because then I get the opportunity to shoot Super 35 if I want. I just don't get why that's like, I had this extensively with I won't name him, but he has a big YouTube channel for cinematography. And I was just like, he's like, Super 35 is it. And I was like, oh, what are we, like, why not have that extra room? But I mean, we just shot the last scene of the whole film on an Alexa 35, and they're great. I have nothing against Super 35, but if I'm going to own a camera and invest money, I want versatility, and I almost kind of want to choose. And then what's great is if you have a full frame sensor that can crop to Super 35, like the FX9 that I'm shooting on right now, then you have the chance to double your lens, as in like your 24 is now also like a 45. Like you have all these extra focal ranges. That said, I would just, man, if you're good with your C70, like Canon log is fantastic. I've shot commercials on the C500 Mark III, I think it is, or whatever. But I have no beef with Canon. It's not part of my ecosystem. And I'm really good at color correcting Sony footage. So I trust it more. And to me, Canon used to have the better color science, and then when the FX9 came along, it was the first time that when I was working with my FX9 footage beside Alexa, I was like, still not Alexa, but it is the closest image I've seen to Alexa. And so that's when I was like, okay, the argument used to be like the FS7 was a really badass dock camera, but still we all knew the C300 had better color science. But now I'm like, it's a toss up. I would lean towards Sony on color science.
Why didn't we shoot the dock on the FX9, Mark? Why did you elect to shoot it on the FX6? Smaller setup or what?
I'll tell you the FX9 has an older chip, so and Sony has a certain level of tolerance for overheating. Because it has to be considered a broadcast camera, they won't ever let it heat to a certain... I'm getting really nerdy right now, but someone out there is going to love this.
We love the nerdy talk.
We love the nerds. I am one. I have the glasses for it. But this FX9 won't get to a certain temperature, but because of that, it won't do certain things. So you couldn't just flip over to 124K. You had to go through the menu and you had to crop in to 5K from the 6K sensor. So it lost 10%. Then you had to go to there was like 4 menus I would have to go through to flip from full frame 24 frames to full frame 60. And that was just unacceptable for me. I'm very rarely these days. The more I shoot, the more I just shoot real time. But not having that capability, and then also the FX9 not having 12,800, that actually comes in handy so much. So the FX9 II is also bigger. It demands more power. Like I said, it has an older chip, and an older sensor. So it's not that the sensor is just many years older. It's just it has a little bit more noise at 2,000. I think it's 4,000, but I would rate it at 2,000. It's just the FX6 is just a newer camera and has more bells and whistles. It's tinier, and having that S and Q button, man,
boom.
That's what they had on the FS7. You just hit S and Q, bam, you're into slow motion. It's like, and then bam, you're out of it. Sometimes, and it happened, the most important shot of the film, I'm shooting Chris real time backstage at the Olympia. I'm in a place I'm not even supposed to be at or have permitted. It's just me and him in this room that he's gonna walk out. This is like the most epic part of his journey. It's like, here's this generation's Arnold Schwarzenegger about to go on stage for the last time at the Olympia. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, I need a slow motion shot here. And I'm like, but I need to hold this shot as long as possible because I know in the film real time, I want that door coming up. And then I could cut to an interview of Chris saying like this and this and that. And then I could cut to slow motion and have this epic last shot of him walking on stage. And if you go watch the teaser, it's the last shot. So quickly I did that, boom, hit slow motion. Boom, hit 12,800 ISO because the slow motion takes down a couple ND. Boom, I hit the neutral density and I dropped to the ground and got like one of my best shots in my career. And it's like, could not have done that with the FX9. So that's a time where like the camera really did matter. And it always blew my mind. And I would just rip Sony. Maybe that's why I'm on Sony's blacklist. Is I was the one, like, I had the video out there saying the FX9 is the best camera of all time, and at the time I still thought it was. But I did go at them hard, saying like, why would you release a camera that doesn't have a full frame slow and quick button? Like, this is so perplexing for me as a doc filmmaker. It actually makes this camera nearly unusable in a sense of like, I don't know what I'm going to be up against. And that's why I went with the FX6 on this project, because I could achieve those and I got to get that shot. And I cannot imagine the frustration of watching Chris walk out on stage while I'm sitting there going through the annoying scroll wheel menu on Sony.
I was going to say that specific shot, man, like banger. It looks legitimately like a fucking Hollywood movie because you got all the flash of him walking out. Like, composition was incredible. Did you know that you were gonna put the title on that when you filmed it? Were you like, I need him to be walking onto like the right third?
No, if I would be lying if I said I knew the title was gonna go there. What it was I wasn't allowed to be there, and I'm like, I can't risk someone from the Olympia broadcast kicking me out of that place because if I leaned any further out, which I would have, in retrospect, I'm glad I shot it that way, but my instincts would have been I want to be directly behind him and getting like perfect center frame. But had I done that, I would have been in the broadcast. You just would have seen me laying out there with my A.O.D hat, like being like, oh, I gotta get like, it's like I would have been in the shot. But so I stayed off to the side, and I was also like, oh, this is cool because he's gonna walk out of frame, and he kind of did. You lose him. So I just took what I could get, but I was also like, I also want to, as a filmmaker, I never want to be too self-indulgent and be like, I'm going to ruin everyone else's experience so I can get my shot. I'm like, this Chris needs to have his moment walking on stage, and I need to be invisible. And that's what I would hope you would sometimes feel as a filmmaker. And so it's like, I just stayed down low in the corner, and shout out to that usher. I don't know who it was. They like held the curtain for me so it didn't go in front of my camera. And I was like, it worked out perfectly. It was one of those things, like the film gods sometimes look down on you and they're like, here you go, you know?
Yeah, no, that shot, man, I was like, damn, that is an incredible shot. One video of your YouTube.
And that crazy door that came down.
Dude, yeah.
Wild.
Unbelievable.
Insane. A video of yours that I recently watched was how to light an interview, and I believe it was for the Chris Bumstead documentary.
Yeah, it was Chris Williamson, I thought. Different one? Or was it Chris Bumstead? No, I think it was Chris.
There's two. I mean, I've had a few about lighting. Was it with a blonde female in my house?
I think so. It was the one where you brought the light outside and you put a tree branch in front.
Yeah.
Incredible tip. What tips do you have for lighting interviews and conducting interviews to get the most out of your subject?
Yeah, so let's separate those because that's technical and story. So first, technical, the lighting for the interviews. It depends the space, but I try to make things. If there's one tip I try to do is like I try to make my lighting feel sourcey, as I call it, like where you really feel the source of the lighting and you feel like there's a light. The challenge these days for me, where I'm like, I want my interviews to feel as natural as my B-roll, and I don't light my B-roll usually. So then it's been this interesting thing where I'm like, so why do my interviews feel lit? And it's like, well, it's like I'm really using predominant lights and not thinking about where they're positioned in the room. So one of the best tips I can give people early on is if you can start to learn to light your subjects in a way that feels believable in the space that light naturally was produced from there, that is the magic of cinematography, that you can make someone look good, you can make it look natural, but it doesn't feel like a source, like a film light's in the room. So the best way to do that, and I teach that in that video, is where are the windows? Depending where the windows are, put your key light, the main light that will be on your character's face, put them from that same side in the room, and naturally our brains will believe that there's a light there. It's like you can kind of even, that's why I light my face in this. You can't, I don't know if you can cut out to the wide shot, but I have a skylight and the light like hits this side of the room. So I light myself from this side of my face because then it feels kind of naturally like this side of the room has more shadow. So it's like even the way I light myself in my YouTube studio here, I'll take that into consideration. Is where's the light naturally falling in the room? And then if you don't like where the light is naturally falling in the room, that's where you need to control it. So in that case, the sun was not coming in through that window, but we got a really high powered light and we punched it through the window so that we could then light from that side. So that's the technical side. And then just get big soft sources that usually helps people look complementary. It's like hard light is cool, but not great for interviews all the time. And then for interviews, I always say this is write down your questions and then throw them out. Like you don't actually physically have to throw them out, but understand the goal of what you're trying to ask and treat it like a conversation. Not that your voice is going to be in it, but be interested and don't just, the worst thing is when you're just staring down at questions and not reacting to what the person's saying, it then feels really like a job interview. And that's not fun. People feel like they're being examined. They feel like they're being searched, where you want them to feel like they're conversing with someone who's interested in them. So that's where I try to make sure that my posture, how I'm sitting, how I'm listening, how I'm reacting to my own things. If I have to take notes, I tell people, I go, hey, I'll be on my phone a little. I'm just taking notes because I find what you're saying very interesting. So I set those parameters up. And I just try to keep it very natural, and it's who the crew members you choose is really important, and having just kind of everyone in on the same page of like, yeah, let's not distract this person. Let's make them feel welcome. And I encourage them throughout. I'm like, oh, that's a great answer. Or, you're doing amazing. Like, I try not to make it feel like there's too much pressure on the situation. I want them forgetting that they're in an interview.
What happens if someone's not giving you exactly what you need? Do you have tips for getting those answers out of them? And will you ever have someone repeat something they said because maybe they like fumbled their words and you're like, that's a great soundbite, can you like say it again for me cleaner?
Yeah, I that is a last resort, explaining it to them in that way. But sometimes I just straight up will like, oh, do you mind just repeating that? And they appreciate that because then they feel like you're going to be presenting them in the best way. sometimes there's three techniques. If someone's not giving you what you want, it's either that they're nervous, they are avoiding a certain idea, or the question just isn't clear enough. So usually what I do is I just reframe the question, or I'll make a note and be like, okay, I'm going to come back to that. And then I'll come back to that idea later on, but I'll ask it in a different way. And then sometimes I ask people, I'll repeat back what they said if it wasn't clear. Because often when you're doing a doc interview, it's a really weird thing. Like, we don't sit down and, well, now that I guess this generation, all we do is podcasts, so we're used to talking about ourselves. But normally you're filming like people who aren't on a podcast. So it's like people aren't used to talking about themselves, or I would hope as a doc filmmaker, you're going to be asking some questions they've never thought about, because otherwise you're just making a film we've already know about this person. So usually if you're doing a good interview, people are going to be talking about ideas that they've never spoken about before. And so they're going to need time to process that. Most people are verbal processors. So some people will pause and think, and that's great. They'll give you a great answer. Chris Williamson was the easiest interview of my life.
Could only imagine.
Was on point. It was incredible. 2 hours of content, and we could use in an hour and 58 minutes of it. And the other 2 minutes was just because I was talking. It's like he just crushed it. But when you're doing an interview, you need to allow people to process their thoughts. And then sometimes I'll just go, so what I'm understanding is this was really important. If I ask, like, when did you get into bodybuilding, Chris? And he goes, oh, that's a long story, blah, 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 blah. And I could say, it sounds like it was when your brother-in-law, Ian, first complimented your stature. And he's like, yeah, I guess it is. I'm like, could you talk about that moment? Then I help guide him towards it. So I repeat back to people what they've been saying to try to make sure that that's actually the truth. Because, my business coach told me, like, he goes, Mark, when you talk, the last two sentences of what you say is truly what you believe. He goes, you're usually exploring the idea the first 3 to 4 sentences. And that was a really big, aha moment for me personally, because I was like, oh, that's probably happening in my interviews. So I really need to be listening in on what they're saying at the end and repeat that back to them and then explore that idea. Or like I said, you just repeat the questions. Or I just ask people, what some people do is they tell you the whole story, and then I just say, like, could you summarize that with me? Like, what is the most important? I don't say what the most important part, because that would put pressure on them, but just say, like, I'm like, that's amazing. Maybe we need a summary, but just summarize the key points for that, and then they'll say back, because they've already exhausted. No one wants to repeat everything. And so they'll just say that, yeah, like, I got into bodybuilding when my brother-in-law, Ian, said, like, hey, you're really strong. It's like, there you go. You have the soundbite now. So it's a process, and you can't, putting pressure on your subjects to nail it the first time is unfair. And not putting any pressure on yourself is unfair to them too, because you need to realize maybe you're not getting out of them. You can't just blame it on the subject. You have to think, okay, how can I improve the situation? How can I make them feel more comfortable? How can I make them forget that they're being interviewed?
Yeah, what's a go-to lens for the specific B-roll that you take in their homes? Is it like a 24-70? Do you like a 24-105? What does that look like?
I would have said it's the Sigma for a minute there. I would have said it's the Sigma 28-45 mil, because it was a 1.8, and I love sometimes just like, shallow depth of field for certain moments. But man, that lens's autofocus is rough. So I like that for interviews. I think that's the best interview lens out there, because interviews, the autofocus is easier. You have a really well lit face, like a lens can follow that. So I love the 28-45 for interviews, because you can do 1.8, and then it's just like having like a couple prime lenses. But for most B-roll, it's funny. It's like, I love prime lenses just because you can get shallow. But in the end, I shot like 80 to 85% of this film on the new Sigma version 2 24-70 2.8 art series. I love that lens. I have nothing against the Sony lenses. Their Sony lenses are fly-by-wire, and they're the reverse than what I'm used to. Yeah. And I'm someone who I like to pull my own focus as much as possible, and I like to be on my zoom as well, getting different moments. And so I always find I have to like kind of unlearn the traditional lens orientation, or at least what I'm used to when I work with a Sony. So I would say if you're not sure, just 24-70 is great. If you need to be in closer, you can walk in closer, like I think that covers the gamut. And if you have a full frame lens, 24 is a beautiful wide shot. But if you're one of those just psychos on a Super 35 sensor, then it's like you might as well be on a 70 to 200. I'm just kidding.
I'm so cooked, dude.
I love the 24 to 70.
You brought up that shot that is one of your best of your career of him walking out on stage. Is there a scene in particular in this film where you're like, this was my favorite, most intense scene? It drove the story more. It really made the film come to life.
I'm gonna take if I can, I'll take a pass on that, because that, you know, I can't give away anything from the film. But I guess to summarize, there was moments where I was able to ask Chris questions off camera and film him, and his reactions weren't what I was expecting, and he brought insights into his life that I wasn't ready for. And so, yeah, some of those moments of intimacy, it's beautiful seeing. And it's you know, one of the clips is actually in the teaser where you see Chris and Courtney there in his gym and he's tearing up. It's like, these are beautiful moments that I was tearing up behind camera, because you see how much dedication and sacrifice he has and the growth he's had in his life. It's like those were beautiful moments. But I can't be, you know, we're just getting into post-production, and I need to make sure, I don't even know what we'll get to the edit in the end. But yeah, I'll just say it was those moments of intimacy that you really feel like you were able to earn, and that Chris was willing to go there.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What do you hope people take away after seeing the film? I know it's not done, but you've filmed for the past, you know, however long, year plus. You've gotten to learn Chris better than most people. You've gotten to see him in very like serious, intense moments. So what do you hope people take away from this documentary? You know, maybe they don't know Chris at all, like you did before filming, or maybe they're like, you know, super fans of Chris but haven't seen him in this light yet.
Yeah, I would like, what would I hope people would take away for their personal lives, or take away from Chris's story? I guess, how is it impacting, or what aspect would you say?
I would say from Chris's story.
Yeah, I think, you know, the goal of making a film is that you're showing people, or one of the goals is that you're showing people aspects of someone's life that they haven't seen before. So what I would hope people would get to glean from this is Chris, you know, the film right now is called The Standard. It's like he set the standard in the industry for his physicality, but also how he showed up as a human. But behind all of that, he set a standard in his own life for how he worked through his own challenges, emotional, physical, spiritual. So what I would hope is someone would get to see, as a fan of Chris Bumstead or someone who doesn't know him, is how much this guy had to go through to get where he got. And it's, you know, there was times where Chris was talking about that in a therapy session, and we had one of our crew members was on set, and they broke into tears because they were going through something in their own life, and they were just like, they were so encouraged and so touched by how Chris was navigating that, something similar in his own life, that I would hope that that's what the audience would have, that reaction, that they can lean in and go like, hell yeah, I can get through this, and I've been given the tools and my personality, like, that they don't have to beat themselves up for the way they are born, but who they can become, I guess is one way of looking at it.
I'm super excited to see it once it comes out. We're gonna have a watch party at 5.
Yeah, me too.
Watch party at 5:05. I want to go into the art of documentary, your filmmaking program, documentary program. What inspired you to make that?
Yeah, I think any good product or business doesn't necessarily have to be, but a good way is that it's birthed out of a problem that you've solved in your life. You know, you think of like Scrub Daddy, like the guy who made that was like, like he hated the way sponges were and made something that worked for himself. I came out of film school and I had spent, somewhere like $80,000 Canadian at the time on 3 years of school. And I didn't know how to tell a good story. And I was like, man, why does this industry seem so elusive in terms of teaching people what storytelling is? Like, and then I also, so I had to like figure that out on my own in a way. And I kind of just went on some instinct, but then a lot of trial and error. And then I was on YouTube and I was like, man, a lot of people out here are talking about LUTs and gear, which have their place, but like, the storytelling is being avoided. So Art of Documentary it came out of those two things. One was I was a terrible storyteller, but I was able to figure it out and was able to work on projects. And like I said, like a lot of trial and error, like a lot of failures, and then a lot of like working through my edits and being pleased with what I created in the end. So it was coming out of that own pain point where I was like, man, I had to really learn storytelling because it wasn't natural to me. Then it was also, I was like, oh, no one's really talking about this in a documentary aspect. So it was those two problems that I was like, you know, I asked my audience, I said one day early in my YouTube career, I just said like a year in, I was like, would you guys want a documentary course? And it was a huge resounding yes. So leaned in on that and we made it. And I was just thinking it was going to be a one-off, but we opened the doors for it in the middle of COVID, like September 2020. And in the first 10 minutes, 100 people joined. And so that was like a huge indicator. I was like, I think people want this. And I hope after taking the course, they felt like they needed it. And the response was incredible. And all it was I have never written a course. I never, you know, actually, that's not true. I had written one for a film school once, but so I had some understanding of like doing a chronological curriculum, but that's all I knew how to do. So then coming into A.O.D, it was that I was like, I'm going to take them through every step that I know that I've done to make my better films. And so it was just like the first course was 50 videos. And it was kind of like 50 short steps through, and that's, you know, films are complex. They, you know, and now we're at 350 videos. Like there's only more things to answer, and we could add another 100 in tomorrow, and there still be more questions being asked. But we wanted it. The goal was to be the complete roadmap to compelling documentary films, and we feel like we've been able to put that out there, and we know it because we're just seeing thousands of films from our students being released, and we do our competitions and our festivals. And so, yeah, it came out of a problem I had to solve for myself. And I kind of came up with a system to simplify it because I knew no other way. I was like, I always went through a documentary program, and I like, there wasn't a real simple system that I could come out of that school with. And I'm like, and I know more people are feeling that.
I was going to ask how you structure the course. I didn't know if it was videos or if it was a cohort style. I did see, I believe you posted on your story that you have like maybe monthly calls or bi-week. I'm not sure how you structure it, but so how does the course actually go? It's, you have a set of videos that kind of teaches everything. And then do you have calls maybe like every month where you bring somebody on or you teach a concept more in depth?
Yeah, we have 5 courses, just really quickly: documentary foundations, advanced documentary, then our perfect cut, which is our editing course, create and earn, which is about business, and then cinematic eye, which is our cinematography course. And now we're developing a producing course that everyone's really excited about, which I love our community. I put a note out there saying, hey, we're going to do one on content creation. But I was like, but let me know if you also want producing. And everyone was like, screw reels. We want to know how to produce a film. So I was like, I love that everyone has that desire to make, you know, more long form projects. But A.O.D is those courses. Each course has 50 to 60, some cases 80 videos. You have lifetime access to those. You can watch those. They take you chronologically through that process. You know, if it's cinematography, it's all the ideas in terms of lighting. Then it's like actually getting on set and holding a camera. Then it's how to light. Then it's how to do advanced lighting. Then it's how to do really advanced lighting. So we take you through that. We do breakdowns. Same with the editing process. Our editing course is amazing. Our editor, Lewis, takes you in real time through him editing a short documentary. And that doc now has like 500,000 views on YouTube. And it's like him showing you how he takes, you know, a month's worth of footage and culls it down into like a succinct film. And then we do our monthly calls that if you buy one course, you get part of our industry calls and you get part of our Facebook group, which is kind of, people really love the A.O.D community. I've crewed up and hired my entire CBUM film from A.O.D students. And like the original concept for the film came from an A.O.D student. So that's been kind of the biggest part of A.O.D is the community now. People are hiring each other and collaborating, making films and getting more opportunities. But then we do bring everyone together, and we always bring in an expert from the industry. So someone who's maybe a few years ahead of us in a place or a position where they're, you know, we bring in festival programmers. Today we had a producer, Ryan Suffren. He's done 30 documentaries. He's won Grammys for Best Music Documentary. He's you know, worked with Spielberg, all these guys. He's giving all these insights into how his career worked and what's working right now in doc and how to submit to festivals. So yeah, A.O.D is those 3 things. It's the community, it's the actual course content, and then it's our gatherings and our contests, which we do, you know, monthly.
Super cool that you guys are doing that. I also hired someone that had taken one of my programs this last week in Charlotte, and it was so cool to be like, wow, like you're on set with us. Like this is an insane, just
fun,
a really cool experience to have. Let me ask you this, from the little rocks that maybe are just starting in your program to the people that are making documentaries that are getting funded, what is, the main thing that you're noticing the Little Rock films aren't doing that these people that are getting, they've been doing it for years, what's missing in that realm? What do you see missing? You've reviewed so many films.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's two things there. I'll talk marketing and story. First with story, it's just very clearly, like I've been saying, I don't know what the film desires. I don't know what question it's asking. I don't know what the main characters want. So it's very aimless, and then you want to turn it off. So I think what a lot of first-time doc filmmakers do is they so focus on the interview, and then they get a good interview in the sense that they felt like their character got emotional or told them lots of things. And then they just go shoot cool B-roll, hoping that because I got a good interview, I'm going to have a good film, which is like, you're just going to shoot a podcast with like, that, that's how Lex Friedman does his podcast. He does an amazing interview, and then his editors just add B-roll associated to what people are talking about. But that's not a film. That's a podcast. And there's no hits on podcasts. Like, I spend a lot of time. Opal tells me that that's my biggest thing I do on my phone. But you, as a filmmaker, you're the medium of filmmaking is showing. Like, you film something happening. So you need to show your character exploring that desire, whether it's through archival or through what's always better is present day, like real-time footage. So that's the biggest mistake, is our people in our community don't choose real-time films, or if they've chosen a film that's already happened, like someone's retelling a story, they haven't put any thought into how to make that interesting. You really, really have to think about that, and that's where you get to be really creative. My film 58 Hours that we did with CNN Films and Discovery, we had to really think about, we're telling a story that's from 1987. I was born in 1987. I don't have any footage from then. How can I make this interesting? And it was like, you start coming up with visual concepts where it's like everyone descended on this hole and just worked together. And I was like, well, that's kind of like ants. So we got this amazing probe lens and we shot ant hills, and that represented kind of like the people at times. And that was just one little moment, but that made the texture and the retelling of the story more interesting. In terms of what I said, that was storytelling. Marketing, what the better students are doing is they're thinking before they ever shoot who their audience is, and they're building towards reaching them. And so, there's one of our students is making a really amazing film, Mountains Internal, Ben Massey. He's already been thinking about, this is about a skier who was paralyzed. So he's really going after the skiing equipment companies. He's going after the ski hills who may want to be partnered with this. He's going after extreme sports athletes and also the disability like communities. And so he's really focusing on that. And that's what's going to help his film reach an audience. So I think the biggest mistake that filmmakers do is they shoot an interview and then they say like, well, I'm shooting a good film. People are just going to want to watch it. And it's like, lightning in the documentary world really strikes that location. You need to be thinking a good film should look effortless, but behind the scenes, man, you're like, how are we reaching our audience? How are we marketing this? Who are we speaking to? It's half of your film is making it. The other half is marketing it. Something
that goes into marketing is creating the trailer. Is creating the trailer something that you guys teach in A.O.D, and what do you feel like makes a good trailer? Because I edit these podcasts, and like, not that I'm making a fucking trailer for a documentary, but it's like I kind of am trying to make like a 30 to 45 second in quotes trailer to best describe, like not give away too much, but give away some key nuggets of like what you can expect listening to the episode. But I feel like there's an art within itself of making a trailer. So like, how do you make a good trailer when it comes to documentary filmmaking?
Well, you already identified it. You said not giving away too much.
Okay.
I think a trailer, again, I'm always saying these things. If anyone listened to multiple podcasts with me, you would hear me repeating some of these concepts. But I always say uncertainty is currency. Like when people don't know what's going to happen, it buys their attention to want to find out. So a good documentary trailer states your character's desires. It explores the world, but it doesn't resolve. Like, you shouldn't show how it all fixes itself in the end, or make it feel like everything is okay in a way, unless it's meant to be like like how Sesame Street was made. But you even see, like, you go back and watch these documentaries, they'll always talk about like the challenges that came alongside in the trailer. And that's what people want to know. They want to know, what do I not know about this? And what am I going to learn how they found resolution? So you can't complete the story. And I find a lot of trailers now give away too much. And I actually find myself, I only watch like 30 seconds of trailers for films I want to see, because I find they give away too much. I just want to know, like, do I like the style of filming? Do I like the tonality that they're trying to achieve? And then I'll bail out on it. But we do need to teach more on trailers. It's something that, you know, we've done and just released that teaser, which was kind of halfway between a commercial and a traditional trailer. But I think state your character's desires, explore the world, and don't resolve it. Like, show that there still is a journey to go. Even if they, like, don't show them winning the championship, show them getting up to that place, you know, show the final game. You know, there's some podcasts out there that when they do their trailers, the people will say, like, the number one thing that'll spike your glucose is, and then they cut. It's like, that's a bit too extreme. It seems to be working for them, you know, Diary of CEO. But I don't know. I love what Steven's doing on that, but it always kind of pisses me off. I'm like, just show me one, give me one thing. But he's exploring it. It's uncertainty. You're like, well, I don't know. And in some cases, it has made me watch it. So, that's kind of what at the core of a trailer should just push you to want to know the resolution.
Yeah, and then also sticking on marketing, obviously you're pitching to Netflix, and I feel like that comes into marketing as well. What are these streamers looking for when it comes to documentaries? Like, what is working for documentaries right now, and how have documentaries changed maybe over the last decade?
Yeah, you know, I want to stop at saying it's sad, because I'm always a glass half full person. So I'm always like, where's the new opportunity? But right now, the documentary landscape is going through some ebbs and flows. Gone are the days that you'd get a big bag of cash or funding up front to do like a film about an unknown person. Right now, the streamers really, you know, they don't want to take huge risks. So they're looking for known entities. Like they're looking for the celebrity-driven film, or they're looking for the salacious murder mystery and true crime films. So those are their two biggest things. True crime, I saw like a chart of all the streaming data, and it's like true crime for everyone is like spiked. Like that's the biggest thing they're taking. And then celebrity-driven films, like the unknown story about what went on in someone's life, is really big. The unfortunate thing for that is, for just an independent doc filmmaker, you usually don't have access to the celebrity, or you don't have access to build a story about a true crime thing, because that takes a lot of people and takes a lot of effort. And so you need like a bigger production company usually behind that. That said, there still is opportunity to find a meaningful topic that that's in the zeitgeist, that's in the public conversation, and find a character in that world. Those can do well. Like I think of what Mike just put out, my business partner, he put out, his name is Ray, and it's doing decent on YouTube considering it's a feature film. And it's about the opioid crisis. It's about a fentanyl addict here in Toronto. And so that's something that's on a lot of people's mind. It's still one of the biggest, highest death rates in North America from what I understand right now. And so having a film that helps explore that world, it doesn't necessarily provide answers, that can do well. But yeah, the streamers are taking less films right now. And so I think what you want to do if you're a young filmmaker is really focus in on your short docs. More people are going to watch those. They're going to be easier to make. You're going to be able to make more of them. You'll be able to get brands to work on them. And then it starts building up a reel. And then the goal for you would be to start connecting with production companies who are looking for directors that they can trust with larger entities. If your goal is to do an episodic doc or to do a feature-length doc. But don't... It's like, I'm going to go make the NBA. It's like, sure, that's a great goal to have. Like, that's like, put that as like, you want to go shoot a feature doc. But why not try to go win just some 3-on-3 tournaments, you know? Like build up a resume. Like, why not just go shoot a couple short docs? Not just, they're still good. But chances are you need to improve your craft. And chances are what you learn on those docs will inform you to be a better feature film director. The biggest mistake I see is people come in, they buy A.O.D, and they are like, I'm finally going to make a film, and it needs to be a feature, and it's about my grandfather, and he was in World War II. It has to be a feature film. It's such a big story. I'm like, just make a badass 3-minute piece about him. Pick one aspect of his life. you're not going to make the feature. And if you do, it's probably not going to be great. So it's not that they're not capable. It's just that it takes a village to make a feature. It takes years. So I think that's the streamers are really tough to get onto right now. So build some steps to get there rather than just going for broke right off the top. And I'm sure there's some motivational speakers listening to this being like, nah, just go for it. You can, but I'm always like, okay, what can I do in the meantime? It's not that I'm giving up on my vision. Like, I'm in the conversation pitching with Netflix. That's always been a goal. But in the meantime, it's like, yeah, I was doing little docs on my YouTube channel, for 20K, like that. And that was okay. If you can take your ego out of it, which took me a long time to do that, it's like you can enjoy the journey a lot more because you're like, oh, this is a stepping stone. Like I can enjoy this because this is actually me achieving my goal.
I think what's really cool about YouTube is this idea that we don't have to wait on anyone to put something out. You talked about your business partner putting out a short film. I noticed on November 4th of 2018, you posted your first ever YouTube video. That's almost 6 years to the day, which is crazy.
Oh yeah, wow.
Yeah, it's almost you have a 6-year anniversary coming up here.
No, it just happened 2 days ago.
Yeah, November 4th.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. 6 years.
That was Monday.
Was that a scary decision? And that was quite a long time ago. Was it a scary decision to say, you know what? Like, I think that there's something here. I can provide a lot of value in my niche. I'm going to go in front of the camera rather than be behind the entire time.
Yeah, it definitely was. I was really nervous that it was going to just kill my directing career. Because at that time, my main source of income was commercial directing. And 6 years ago, it's amazing how quickly things change. But like being a YouTuber was like frowned upon.
Yeah.
It felt self-indulgent. It felt like the idea was you went to YouTube because you couldn't make it in the industry, which is so far from the truth now. But I was really nervous that I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Am I killing my career? But I had really thoughtfully and truthfully, prayerfully, like thought about it. Like if I'm going to make this step, like this has to be the right thing. And I believe that I'm supposed to be a filmmaker. That's kind of what I've been called to. So I was like, I don't want to just do this because Toronto has a lot of YouTubers who I'm friends with who are telling me to start a channel. Like I want to do this for the right reasons. So before I ever started the channel, I actually made 3 or 4 YouTube videos in my condo at the time, shot them, edited them, and just uploaded them to Dropbox and let them sit there and then just pretended I had a YouTube channel. Because the thing I wanted to know was, do I enjoy this process? Because it's important that you enjoy processes, like you enjoy like the mundane day-to-day work. Like otherwise you just hate your career. I was like, if I'm going to embark on this, I know I like when I do things, I usually go full in. So I'm going to probably end up doing this really intensely, but I want to know that do I actually enjoy the mechanics of it? Because if I don't, then I don't want to do this. Like I need to know that I'm doing this for the right reasons. I'm not just doing it so that people give me an applause. Like people come in and comment like, if you know the Enneagram, I'm naturally my strongest Enneagram number is the 3. I'm an entertainer, performer, achiever. That's kind of what that is. And so it's like, I'm aware that I enjoy doing things in front of a crowd. And I was really nervous that I'm like, I don't want to do YouTube for that reason. So I just did it invisible, did it in my condo. And after 3 or 4 months, I was like, man, I enjoy teaching. Like I really enjoy this. This has been helpful for me to take these ideas, like it was like the first time I broke down a documentary into 3 simple steps. And I was like, oh, that's actually really helpful. Like that's helping me make my next films because I actually have a system. I'm able to like take everything that's naturally, or that I've developed in my brain and systematize it and understand this craft better. So that's when I decided, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And it was, one of my first videos was like how to like make a documentary or whatever, or I think it was called Why Your Film Sucks.
That is what it was called.
Yeah. And then, so yeah, I went for it. I had low expectations. Actually I had high expectations cause like the person who was bugging me most to start it was Matty Apoya. And I remember his first year, he hit 300,000 subs. I was like, I'll do 100,000. And after my first year, I said, but I'm going to do this for a year. Like anything, if you're going into a relationship or you're starting a new thing, it's like, you should do it for a year. Like the earth takes a year to go around the sun. Just go 1 trip around the sun if you're going to really invest into something. Know if like, I really like running? I'm going to do this for a full year because maybe I love it in the summer, but maybe I hate it in the winter. And so it's like, you don't want to date that person in the winter, especially if you're in Canada, because if they don't like the cold and they get grumpy when it's dark out at 3 p.m., like it's going to be a terrible relationship. So just like do a year for anything. And after a year, I was like, if I don't hit 100,000 subs, I'm out of here. And, lo and behold, I guess November 6th, 2019 came along and I was at 8,000 subs or 10,000, I think. I think it was like, maybe it was a little more. It was like 14,000 or something. But regardless, I was way off from my mark. But I remember sitting there being like, I didn't hit my goal. But I don't really want to leave this. I'm kind of enjoying this. And that's when I was like, okay, like an arbitrary goal I made doesn't have to dictate the joy I'm experiencing. So I just leaned into it and kept doing it. And I'm so glad I did. YouTube has completely changed. I know it's hyperbolic to say it, but it has changed my life. It allowed me to detach my economic value and system from the commercial industry here in Canada, which I'm so glad I did, so that I didn't have to shoot commercials that I was so inspired to do, and do the 3-month pitching process just to shoot on a green screen, like all of the crazy agency stuff that comes with commercials. I was really becoming disillusioned with that. I got to then just, it all came down to one day, one of my first brand deals, I sent the video to the brand and I didn't hear from them, and I was like all nervous. I was like, it was my first time doing a brand deal. Like I made like a little doc, and then I asked them like, hey, did you get it? Like, did you receive it? And they, you're texting with the client, which is unique in itself. And I just got a thumbs up. I was like, oh, cool, you received it. I was like, is it approved? Like, oh no, yeah. Like they looped back to the thumbs up. They're like, yeah, see my thumbs. And I was like, whoa. It was like this one emoji changed everything for me. I was like, I just made as much money as I did directing a commercial for 3 months as I did with this one brand deal. And the approval process was a friggin' emoji. And I was like, I'm in on YouTube. I'm done. I don't care that I'm not shooting Nike commercials anymore. I don't care that that the budgets are smaller. I'm like, that headache of going through all of the agency, you have to love that stuff. And I started to not like it. I wanted just to get back to filmmaking and get back to holding my camera in front of an interesting person. And so, commercials weren't allowing me that opportunity. They do sometimes, but not always. So I'm very, very picky about the commercials I shoot now.
How far into your YouTube journey were you able to land that first brand deal? Was it within that first year or beyond?
Yeah, like it was just kind of, I took a few tiny, like technically that wasn't like that was like, I had a few ad reads, call it, but that was like my first one that felt like a substantial like brand deal with like a deliverable. But I didn't really I was very selective because I was so nervous too. Like there was like music libraries, not Music Bed, but other ones that I reached out, and I kept saying no because I was like, oh, they have such terrible stock music. I don't want to be associated with them. So I was really picky, overly picky with who I worked with. But it was also like a time too where most of the brands I traditionally been working with was like Arri and like Cook's lenses. And it's like, I can't tell my audience to go spend $100,000 on a camera body and $33,000 per lens. Like, so it's like kind of had to like back up into the YouTube space and start being like, okay, what is a Nan light? Like what are these things? Like it's not like an 18K from the commercial world. So it was like, it was fun to get to kind of experience these new products and be like, oh, maybe I will talk about an iPhone gimbal, which I actually never did because it broke and I didn't care to learn it. But it was kind of going into that space. And so I guess it was just over a year. And I remember a guy who runs some YouTube channels, he told me, he was like, that's the best decision you ever made before launching Art of Documentary, because you weren't selling in every video. When you finally put out your own product, you'd spent 2 years on your YouTube channel. And this was just by being stubborn. It wasn't this big master plan. But when I finally spoke about my course, I had a couple people buy it and say, they're like, I'm not even a filmmaker. I'm so great. You've provided so much information about storytelling. I just wanted to support your brand. And I built a lot of goodwill with my audience because I wasn't always hawking a new product for them. So that's where I'm kind of grateful that it went down that way, and grateful that I was really stubborn in the early days, actually, because I wasn't grabbing at short-term cash. It's like it turned into a long-term vision. But I won't sit here and say like that was my plan all along. It just was that I was like kind of insecure about supporting brands that I didn't believe in or use myself. I just didn't know how to talk about them.
Sure. And so you say that you go all in. You're someone that 100% when you start something new, let's do it for a full year and really dedicate ourselves to it. Did you put out 52 videos, one every single week in that first year?
No, there was times where I fell off a bit. I remember there was one guy, Bobby something or other. It's funny, you remember these things. He was one of my first subscribers. He reached out to me in January. I launched and I hadn't put out anything for a couple weeks because I was over in Germany. And he just says, hey man, like I've really loved your first few YouTube videos. I saw you haven't been posting every week like you said you wanted to. Like, I just encourage you, like keep going. Like it's you're putting out good content. And the fact that I'm still talking about that, clearly that had an impact. So if anyone's watching this, like say the nice thing, don't be afraid to say that or DM someone you don't know. You never know. So I didn't do it every week. Matty was like, oh, you got to put 3 out a week. And I was like, I can't manage that.
See you later.
But I did manage to get it out. Like, YouTube, you can just do the math. And I think I was putting one out every 9 to 10 days. And so that felt like I was like, I can manage. I was averaging essentially like 3 a month. And that's fine. And I've taken the pressure off myself to have to do one every week. Like I haven't put one out for 2 weeks. I was going to put one out today, but it's the election that I was like, I don't know if I want to fight all that. So I'll put it out tomorrow. It's I did do it for a year, but yeah, no, I certainly didn't achieve the once every week.
What advice would you have for someone who's looking to dive into YouTube, into this machine of an algorithm?
Yeah, I think teach from what you know. There's a lot of channels out there. You see so many videographers, filmmakers now starting their channels, and they're not. It's not coming from a very insightful place because they just haven't given themselves the chance to try new things or to build up some career. I'm very lucky that I was born when I was born because I before I started my YouTube channel, I had 8 years in the industry. So there was some time to build up some knowledge and some semblance of wisdom, or at least I had made a lot of mistakes and took 8 years to figure out doc storytelling. And so I think it's like teach from what you know. It's like get your channel out there so you get used to being on camera and you can start building some rapport with your audience, but focus on growing. Like if you're actually doing some new stuff that you're growing in, you can talk about that and be honest about that. But just trying to follow a trend or copy other people's thumbnails and be like, what top 10 gear this year? It's like, if you're not using it or be able to, people know right away when it's being spoken from experience or from just excitement.
How do you decide which video topics are worth making a full video about?
Man, I still fail at this because I cringe at sometimes doing like kind of clickbaity titles. Although if you were to scroll through my channel, you would definitely see some of that. But you have to reverse engineer your video. You have to think, what's the thumbnail and the title I'd want to click on and then build it from there. Because at times I've built a really informative video, but the title for it wouldn't be exciting. So then I choose another title and people are like, hey, this video isn't talking exactly about this. But it's a huge dopamine hit when you have a salacious, like the most important gear of the year or whatever. If you have that title and then parlay it into like a good thumbnail and then you answer that question right away in your video, then it all feels like really trustworthy. But I think reverse engineering is kind of the best way to go about the video is, and then I also think it's like, is this new information? Because people like that. Like if there's a new piece of gear that's not out there, people want to learn. People like novelty. But if you're going to go back and teach something that's not new, you need to show the process in detail. That's what I've learned. Like if I want to show 3-point lighting or whatever, like the traditional style of setting up an interview, you can't just say like, here's the way, 3-point lighting is a key, a fill, and a backlight. So people know that. You have to break down how you actually do it. That might be the new information. That might be someone hasn't seen that done step by step. So I think entertainment and education are the two key points of YouTube. And you have to be thinking like, entertainment's challenging. You got to be funny. You got to be snappy. But if you can be very educational and it can be stuff that people maybe haven't seen before or haven't seen broken down in such detail, that's a great way to allow yourself to know what videos you want to make.
How do you avoid burnout with the YouTube videos that you're doing, with A.O.D, with the balancing, making your own documentary films? What does that balance look like? I'm sure it's a delicate one that,
Yeah, man. I like truly like, I know when I'm getting close to burnout when I'm oversensitive to feedback.
Man,
and that's
I'm
like a
like
huge
that every
indication
day.
for me. And yeah. If someone's even just making like a really innocuous remark about something in my life or someone I'm working with, and I like am really cagey, or I'm like or it impacts me way more, and they're like, whoa, I would, like this wasn't a criticism, and then I'm like, but I took it that way. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm at the end of my candle, and just genuinely personally, not to over spiritualize it. For me, I know the best way for my burnout is I have to create like half an hour in the morning where I just do a bit of prayer, meditation, Bible reading. Like I just need to clear my head. I need to be connected. And for me, the idea of I'm a creator and connecting to the creator of the universe. That's like where my peace is found. And I had said it recently to my girlfriend. I was just like, she brought up something, and I was really like, I overreacted. And then I just told her, I was like, hey, that wasn't you. I haven't sought peace for a while. So it's learning, your no is only as strong as your yes. Like I'm learning that I have to say no more. I genuinely have to. Even today, I've said yes to too many meetings, and it's like I haven't done any work. I've just been in A.O.D calls. This is fun. I've been looking forward to this, but I had calls this morning. It's like it's on me to say no more, but it's on me to create that place of peace. Like we're designed to rest. We're designed to go to sleep. I think we're designed to have like a day off, at least on a Sunday or whatever day you choose. But that's how. I'm not always good at avoiding burnout. Like, 'cause it usually just hits me. Like I go, then bam, I'm like suddenly like overreacting to something. So, but where I found that I'm most at peace and most happy is when I take that time in the morning just to ground myself. And that can look like different for other people, but for me, it's through journaling, it's through talking with God, and it's just through just creating a space where I'm not connected to technology, that's funny. I can't say it. It's late in the day. Technology and then and other people. It's like you have to disconnect. Yeah. Otherwise you can't keep going to the bank without putting something back in it.
I think that's really, really good advice. We're also very grateful that you said yes to us and not no. So thank you for that. Has there been any specific opportunity that has arose from building a large audience on YouTube or social media in general that you're like super stoked on or really proud of, an opportunity that came about you growing a following that wouldn't have happened had you not?
Well, I think the best thing is the CBUM film. It was what our student Calvin, we've taught enough about storytelling that when CBUM himself or Chris Bumstead and his team were like, oh, we need a documentary about my career, Calvin just said like, okay, I think I can come on as a producer. I just don't think I'm ready to direct something this big, or I want to bring on a director. So it was a moment of humility and gratitude for me, where they came and said, could you tell this story? Could your team, they didn't initially say you, Mark, they came to both me and Mike. And Mike looked at the film and just said, I think your schedule and your style is better suited for this, Mark. And he actually, at that time, we had another student who was bringing us as another project, funny enough, down in Florida. And Mike's like, I would like to direct that one. So we decided that, yeah, we both direct these separate projects. Mike actually took that project all the way to Netflix and had a meeting with them recently, and that's still in development. But I think this opportunity would just be the most recent one. So it's on my mind, where I'm like, this is so cool. And then what's been fun about it is it's not like this is the mark. You don't want it just to be like, hey, this is about me making this film. It's about us collaborating. It's about us making it. And so we've been able to hire all A.O.D people. It's like, it's our crew in Vegas for the final competition was like 8 of us from A.O.D. It's like, it's been great having Calvin, who's Chris's videographer and creative director, him being on it. So yeah, I'm really proud of that we are able to create collaboration and work on projects and tell stories that we otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to.
It's badass.
I love it. Mark, I got one more for you. What is some advice that you would give to your 18-year-old self if you could go back?
Let's go back. This one's funny because I always say, just make a film right away, because I was waiting for people to tell me that I could. But in a way, I'm kind of glad that I waited as long as I did, because I had enough skills that when I finally felt like I stepped out and made my film Rescate about the paramedics in the Dominican, Like I felt like I still love that film. I go back and, you know, I'm like, yeah, I could probably cut down some stuff out of the film, but it was still a very strong film. But I probably would go back, you know, it's kind of the cliche thing, but let me actually, I was going to say the one thing is like, oh, don't care about what other people say, just do the thing. But it's like, we've all heard that. But I probably would have said this to myself is throw out the timeline. I remember getting a life coach at 25 and I was like, I want to win an Academy Award by the time I'm 27. It's just like arbitrary timelines. You know, even like my YouTube channel, I need to hit 100,000 subscribers or else I'm leaving. I just throw out the timeline because in turn, I made some really bad decisions in my life because I felt like I was behind on my timeline. And like, you know, stuff that cost me like, you know, just like the most amount of money you could imagine, you know, like that had put me in positions in my life that one day I'll write in a book that it's like, because I put timelines and forced things to happen earlier, I was compromising rather than being really present in what was really going on and just trusting the process, trusting God, trusting that life would unfold at the time it needed to. So I would go back and I would put my hand on that young Mark's shoulder and just say like, throw out the timeline, man. It's gonna happen. I promise you it'll happen. Just be present and be bold. And I would tell him that because, man, like just forcing a timeline that's not realistic will put you in places that you're not ready for.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 133 of the 505 podcast. If you're still here, please go check out Mark's channel. Hit him up on Instagram. Tell him you came from the 505 pod, and we'll see you all next week. Peace.